All right, hopefully everybody can see my screen okay.
Yep, it looks great.
Thanks, Rachel, for inviting me to do this. This is, as we've been saying, building a better workstation is the topic of today's presentation. I'm Steve Wake. I'm a consultant with RevGen Partners out here in Denver, Colorado. And then I'm also on the side as well, president of the Denver SQL Server user group here. So any of you that are on this session or listening to it that are in the Colorado, Denver area, feel free to look us up. We actually meet, tonight is actually our meeting for June, so if you are in the area and available to come, that'd be great. To get more information on it, you can just go to denversql.org is our website for the user group, so we enjoy having lots of people come to our meetings every month, and can't make this month, hopefully you can make one in the future. So just kind of a quick agenda on what the types of things I'm going to cover in this session here. Is kind of go through a little bit of stuff on hardware when you're building out a workstation, kind of some of the stuff to keep in mind with that. And then we'll also get into some of the other technologies that we kind of mentioned there in the poll. We have the running your workstation on a local laptop and or desktop situation, or doing virtual or into the cloud, as some people, it appears based on the poll, are actually starting to do, which is becoming a little bit more prevalent. So I'll cover the pluses and minuses to all those different platforms. And then kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into the VM platform setup, because I find quite a few people, and it's actually proven out by what we saw in the poll results, but a lot of people don't really know how VM platforms actually work and are maybe a little bit hesitant to try them out. But you know, I kind of do my best to kind of explain some of the stuff with that so that you can make the choice for yourself if maybe you want to switch over to doing more stuff with VMs. And then I'll also do a little bit of covering stuff that has to do with actually the different SQL Server installs you may have with the tools on that particular workstation, and especially with those of you who have been doing any SQL Server development for a while are probably very aware of all the different versions of the development tools. And I'll kind of have a slide that you can look at that kind of helps show what's compatible with what and all that kind of stuff as well, which is kind of gets really interesting when you actually see how the stuff works together with the different versions. And then some other stuff on how to handle doing updates to your VM once you've gotten everything installed on it, how you keep it up to date. And then at the end, I'll have some recommendations on what I think is really good hardware and a really good setup, at least the setup that I use and have been using for a regular basis for a few years now. So the first thing that comes up, and as most people in the poll that we did beforehand had said, about 65% or so of the audience are actually already using a laptop or a desktop to do their development directly on it. And sometimes that question, you know, comes down to, do you want to have a laptop or a desktop as well? And I kind of wanted to highlight that difference. Kind of the biggest thing that it comes down to is, do you need something you can take with you? Being a consultant for the last few years, I have realized that having everything on a laptop is basically a must. I'm traveling quite a bit, going to different client sites across the country, stuff like that. I kind of need to have my capabilities all built in with me that I can take on the road very easily. So typically my choice, because of my demands, make it so that I have to do a laptop. But some people, if you're a little bit more centrally located, you're not going to be traveling as much, you may choose to do a desktop. And those kind of things are highlighted in that table, where you do get the capabilities of a lot more power, a lot easier to upgrade. You can have built-in redundancy where you can have multiple power supplies, a lot of different hard drives. Laptops, that's a little bit more difficult to do unless you're going to buy one of these monster 18-inch laptops that can have like 3 or 4 different drive bays in them and stuff like that. So typically, if you want that kind of redundancy, you almost have to go with a desktop. And with laptops, you can also, they've gotten a lot better over the years, I found. It used to be when I first started doing SQL development, you really didn't have a choice. You almost had to go with a desktop to have enough power to run all the tools that we needed to run at the time. But nowadays, you're getting laptops that are very easily upgradable with multiple cores. Up to 16 gigs of RAM has actually become fairly ubiquitous across all the different laptop lines. And now SSDs have really changed everything. The laptop that I'm actually running right now actually does have a terabyte SSD in it, which a few years ago I would never have thought was possible to actually put an entire terabyte worth of stuff onto an SSD. The price would have just been through the roof not more than a couple years ago. I was able to get that terabyte SSD for just over $400 nowadays. So it's really gotten cheap to get that kind of size of an SSD, which is great for doing VMs, which I'll get into in a minute because they do take up a lot of hard drive space. So as I mentioned, you kind of have this three-pronged approach that you can look at, and some people use a combination of all these, and I've kind of worked with all these to a certain extent. I don't have as much experience with the cloud type scenario at this particular point in time, since it is kind of a new scenario for doing this kind of work. But you know, between the local and virtual, you kind of have to think about some of these different questions that you might want to ask. Biggest thing being is speed, an important part of what you're going to be doing. So are you going to be using this environment to do some performance or load testing type scenarios? If so, then you might be locked into a local workstation type scenario so that you can kind of be on par with a server. You know, some places have actually worked. We actually even had our workstations were actually servers. They were actually real servers. They weren't, you know, production class servers by any means, but they were actual blade servers in a data center that we would remote into and do our work that way as well. So that's a possibility as well if you're going to go that route, is to actually set up servers to do that kind of stuff and just remote into it. The other thing that I have to think about doing a lot of presentations and demos and stuff like that for clients is the ability to reset and reuse your environment. Something to keep in mind if you do a lot of that kind of stuff is to be able to set up SQL Server, to put maybe some basic demo databases into the scenario, into whatever you're going to set up in the workstation, and then do your demo, and then say maybe in an hour after that you might have another demo in the same environment for a different client. It's nice with VMs that you can actually go in and use what they call snapshotting to snapshot the hard drive. It basically takes a picture of what the hard drive looks like at that point in time, and then you can actually, when you're done using it for that first demo, have it reset back to that snapshot, which usually only takes minutes to perform, and then go to the next client, you're back up and running, and it's exactly the same state that it was when you started that first demo earlier in the day. So that becomes a really big thing, and that's almost the easiest way to do that really is only with VMs, whether they're in the cloud or running on the machine itself. So if you're into that kind of scenario, that's something to think about as well.